The smell hits you before you even turn the burner on. It is that faint scorched grease smell that has worked its way into the metal grates, settled around the burner caps, and baked itself a little deeper into the porcelain every single time you cooked. You wipe the surface down after dinner, you do, but the grates go back on still a little tacky, still carrying the memory of last Tuesday's sauce and the week before that. And then you cook again, and the heat seals it in a little more, and after a while the cooktop just looks permanently dim. Not dirty exactly, just dull, filmed over, like no amount of wiping is ever going to get it back to what it was when it was new. Here's what I want you to know before we go any further. The method I'm going to share with you costs somewhere between 50 cents and $1. It takes about 5 minutes once you know the order of things, and the part that might genuinely irritate you when you hear it is how simple the materials are and how long you have probably been reaching past them for something in a spray bottle that costs $8 or $12 and does not work half as well. I kept a wood-burning range for most of my adult life. Out on the homestead, cooking over real fire is not a romantic notion. It is just breakfast and dinner and the rendering of fat and the boiling of water for canning and all the rest of it. Grease and carbon are old friends I have been managing since I was young enough to stand on a step stool beside my mother at the stove. I know what cuts through baked-on drippings and what just moves them around. I know what strips a cast iron grate and what leaves it sound. And I know that the cleanest cooktops I have ever seen in my life were not in houses with fancy products under the sink. They were in houses where the women knew what they were doing and did a small thing every week without skipping it. That is what we are doing here. One small thing, done right. Before I get into the method, drop your location in the comments and let me know where you are writing from. I read every single one that comes through, and the folks who have been finding their way here lately are coming from all over, which genuinely pleases me. Stay here with me by hitting that subscribe button, because what I share on this channel does not come from a marketing department. It comes from a Blue Ridge Mountain upbringing and about 56 years of keeping a real home running. One thing I will mention just this once and then move on. There is a handbook. Everything I know about keeping a clean, sound, well-maintained home the old Appalachian way, gathered together in one place. If you want it, the code is on the screen right now, and the link sits in the description below. A good number of the methods in it touch on the same kitchen wisdom we are getting into today. Now, let me start with what most cleaning instructions get completely wrong about a gas cooktop, because if you do not understand this one thing first, the rest of the method will not make much sense, and you will be back to scrubbing harder than you need to. The cooktop surface, the grates, and the burner caps are 3 different materials with 3 different problems, and they need 3 different approaches handled in the right order. Spray something harsh across all of it at once and wipe it down together, and what you get is a surface that looks cleaner for about 48 hours and then films back over faster than it did before. The residue from most commercial sprays is the problem. It does not rinse away clean. It leaves a thin layer that the next round of cooking heat bakes right back into the surface, and every week the film gets a little thicker and a little harder to move. What cuts through it is not stronger chemistry. What cuts through it is the right chemistry in the right sequence left to do its work for the right amount of time on the right parts. The single biggest mistake people make with a gas cooktop is treating it like a flat surface. It is not. It is an assembly of parts, and each part has accumulated a different kind of buildup in a different way, and each one needs to come off the stove before you touch any of it with anything wet. Pull the grates off first and set them in the sink. Then lift the burner caps. Those are the small disc-shaped pieces that sit right over the burner heads, the ones that take the direct heat every time you cook. Set those beside the grates. Set those beside the grates as well. Now look at what is left. The porcelain cooktop surface itself, the burner head still attached to the stove, and whatever has pooled in the recessed drip areas around them. These are your 3 zones, and you are going to work them in order. Here is where the vinegar comes in, and here is why it works the way it does. Cooking grease is slightly alkaline by nature. White distilled vinegar is an acid, not a harsh one. Nothing here is going to burn your hands or hurt the surface, but enough of an acid to begin breaking down the fat molecules in baked-on grease when it has a few minutes of contact time. You do not need a science class to use it. The short version is this: acid loosens what heat has sealed. That is the whole principle, and the rest of the method is just applying it correctly. Fill your sink with the hottest tap water it will give you. Add half a cup of plain white distilled vinegar, the kind in the large jug that costs somewhere around $2 or $3 at any grocery store, and a good squeeze of plain dish soap, nothing fancy. Submerge the grates and the burner caps completely, and then just leave them there. Do not scrub them yet. Set a timer for 10 minutes and walk away, because the work is happening without you, and interrupting it early is the single most common reason people end up scrubbing longer than they should have to. While the grates soak, you are going to work the cooktop surface. Spray the whole surface with straight white vinegar from a spray bottle. Just the surface itself, not the burner heads. Let it sit for 2 minutes. While it sits, make a small paste in a bowl. 2 tablespoons of baking soda, just enough dish soap to bring it together into something that holds its shape, and about a teaspoon of white vinegar to start the gentle fizzing action. The fizzing is not decorative. The carbon dioxide bubbles created when the acid and the baking soda meet help lift debris away from the surface on a microscopic level, working it loose from the bottom up rather than relying on you to push it off from the top down. Wipe the vinegar off the cooktop surface with a damp cloth first, a plain cotton cloth, nothing abrasive. You will see the cloth come away with a surprising amount of residue on it, even from a cooktop that looked reasonably clean. That is the vinegar doing its first pass of work. Now apply the paste to any area that has visible grease, discoloration, or filmed over dullness. Spread it gently and do not press hard. The paste is your worker here, not your muscle, and the porcelain on a gas cooktop surface will show fine scratches if you treat it like a pot you are scrubbing. Leave the paste on the surface for another 3 to 4 minutes. Keep your hands off it. Now look at the burner heads themselves, the fixed parts you cannot remove. Take a dry, stiff-bristled toothbrush and work around the small gas ports, the tiny holes ringing the burner head where the flame comes out. Those ports clog with grease and food residue, and when they are clogged, your flame burns uneven. You may have noticed one side of a burner running higher than the other, or a flame that spits or stutters when it first lights. A dry toothbrush, working in small circles around each port, clears them without introducing moisture into the gas fitting. Never spray liquid directly into a burner head. That is the one firm rule of this whole process, and it protects both the fitting and the igniter underneath it. Your 10 minutes on the grates is nearly up, and the paste on the surface has had its time to work. A burner cap put back on the stove with moisture in it will cause the igniter to click repeatedly on its own, the way it does when a pot boils over. That clicking is the igniter detecting conductivity from the water and trying to light. It is harmless for a short time, but it is hard on the igniter over years of repetition. Dry the caps completely and the problem never starts. Back to the cooktop surface. Wipe the baking soda paste away with a damp cloth, working in long, straight strokes rather than circles so you can see where the residue is going and where the surface is clearing. Rinse your cloth twice during this step. A cloth carrying baking soda residue just spreads it rather than removes it. After the paste is gone, do a final wipe with a cloth dampened with plain water, and then immediately dry the surface with a second dry cloth. The drying step is not optional. Water left standing on the porcelain surface, particularly around the burner head fittings, works its way into small surface cracks over time and eventually shows as faint rust-colored staining that is genuinely difficult to reverse. Now, the part that matters more than anything else I have said today. I want to be plain with you about what this method will and will not do, because I would rather tell you the honest limit than have you feel like something went wrong when it did not. This method, the soak, the paste, the sequence, will clear weakly accumulated cooking grease, residue film, and light to moderate baked-on buildup from a cooktop that has been maintained with some regularity. What it will not do in a single pass is remove years of heavy carbonized buildup from grates that have never been soaked, or thick black carbon deposits on burner caps that have been cooking at high heat for a long season without cleaning. That kind of buildup is not grease anymore. It has crossed over into carbon, and carbon requires a different approach. A longer soak, overnight in some cases, or a baking soda paste left on for an hour rather than 4 minutes. If you are starting from a cooktop that has been neglected for a long time, do this method twice in the same session with a longer soak on the second pass before you decide it is not working. The first pass breaks the surface seal. The second pass moves what the first one loosened. That is not a failure of the method. That is simply the honest arithmetic of catching up on accumulated time. The reason this whole process takes 5 minutes going forward, and it genuinely does once you are maintaining rather than catching up, is the weekly habit that makes it stay that way. Every week, same day, same order. After the cooktop has cooled completely from its last use, lift the grates, wipe the surface with a cloth dampened with a small amount of white vinegar, wipe it dry, and put the grates back. That single wipe, done before the week's cooking has a chance to heat seal itself into the porcelain, prevents the need for the full paste treatment on all but the occasional deeper clean. The paste and the soak become a once-a-month task rather than a weekly one, because the weekly vinegar wipe keeps the accumulation from ever reaching the point where it needs more than that. A clean cooktop is not the product of one good scrubbing session. It is the product of a short, consistent habit done before the buildup has time to become something harder than habit can handle. Nobody is going to sell you white vinegar and baking soda on a television advertisement. There is no profit margin in it worth the airtime. The companies that make cooktop sprays and specialty degreasers and foaming cleaner kits in matching bottles are not selling you cleaning chemistry. They are selling you the feeling that the problem is too complicated for anything you already own. That is the whole business model, and it has been working for decades because nobody stopped to ask why a product that costs $11 needs to exist when a material that costs $2 and has been in Appalachian kitchens for generations does the same job more gently and leaves no chemical residue behind. On a surface your food sits on every single day. There is no villain in that story exactly. It is simply the way markets work. There is no profit in the old way, and that is precisely why nobody packages it up and puts it on the shelf at eye level next to the register. What got lost is not the chemistry. Vinegar and baking soda did not go anywhere. What got lost is the knowledge of how to use them in the right order for the right amount of time on the right surface. That knowledge used to pass from the women in a household to the young people coming up behind them, the way everything practical passed, not through instruction manuals, but through standing in the kitchen together and watching and doing. When that transmission broke down, the gap did not stay empty. Something moved in to fill it, and what moved in had a price tag. My mother kept the cleanest wood-burning range I have ever seen in my life, and she did it with a cloth, a jug of vinegar, and a box of baking soda that lived on the shelf above the wash basin. After supper, once the range had cooled enough to touch, she wiped it down every night. Not a production, just the cloth, a little vinegar, dried off before she hung the cloth back up. Saturday morning, she did the full clean. Grates in the sink, paste on the iron surface, burner ports brushed out with an old toothbrush she kept in the cleaning tin on the back porch. The whole thing was done before the bread came out of the oven for the week. She never called it a method. She never called it anything. It was just what you did when you kept a home, the way you swept the floor and kept the pantry dry, and checked the window seals before cold weather came in. The house ran on small habits done consistently, and the range stayed clean because she never let it get to a state where cleaning it required a fight. That is what I want you to take from today more than the recipe itself. Here is what you need and what you do with it. Plain white distilled vinegar, the large jug, $2 to $3 at any grocery store. Plain baking soda, the standard box under $2. Plain dish soap, whatever you already have. A non-scratch scrub pad, $1 or $2. An old toothbrush you are not using for anything else. Lift the grates and burner caps off the stove. Soak them in hot water with half a cup of vinegar and a squeeze of dish soap for 10 minutes. While they soak, spray the cooktop surface with straight vinegar, let it sit for 2 minutes, wipe it off, then apply a paste of baking soda, dish soap, and a small amount of vinegar to any grimy areas and leave it for 3 to 4 minutes. Use a dry toothbrush on the burner ports, never wet. Wipe the paste away with a damp cloth, finish with a dry cloth. Scrub the soaked grates gently with a non-scratch pad, rinse them, and dry the burner caps completely before anything goes back on the stove. Do the short vinegar wipe every week after the cooktop cools, and the full method drops to once a month at most. Folks who have been watching a while already know that every method I share tends to lead somewhere else worth knowing. There is a whole thread that runs from cooktop care through cast iron seasoning and into the broader question of how the old homesteaders kept their cooking equipment sound for decades without replacing it. That is where we are headed, and if you want to keep getting this kind of help, the subscribe button is right there. These old methods are not going to promote themselves, and every person who stays is one more reason to keep sharing what I know. Before you go, drop something in the comments. Tell me what part of this you're going to try first, or whether you have a cleaning method of your own that has been working for years. What comes through down there, I read, every word of it. Keep your surface wiped and your burner ports clear, and the stove that fed your family this year will feed them just as well 10 years from now. That is not a promise from a product. That is just what happens when you take care of what takes care of you.